What am I to do?
Welcome to He Said, She Said Razor Branding Podcast with Michael Russo and Jaci Russo. To learn more about how to improve your brand, visit brandRUSSO.com.
Michael, I'm so excited about Chris Hutchinson being with us today. We first met him in Fort Worth at 21 Hats. Well, that's when you first met him. I have had the opportunity to work with him through the 21 Hats Mastermind. And so I've been in, monthly meetings with him in our peer group. And what the work that he and the rest of his team are doing at Trebuchet Group it's awesome. It is all about helping great teams accomplish great things.
Yeah, and I think we've had a couple people on our podcast over the past year. They've had similar offerings, I think, to a degree, but I think Chris really kind of honed into the leadership aspect of that. And I think that's it's so important, because if you don't have the leadership believing in these things and providing these resources, then it really doesn't matter much after that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I think, from his training as an Air Force officer, I think that's where he really, at least the way he's talked to me about it, that's where I think he really figured out how leadership can make or break the effectiveness of teams and individuals. And then, he references it in our discussion that he's a recovering mechanical engineer. So he understands how systems need to serve people who can use them to be successful together. And then I also encourage everyone to get his book, Ripple, A Field Manual for Leadership That Works. But when it comes down to it, what I hear Chris talk about over and over again is that great leadership can be learned, and everyone plays a leadership role in some way. Yeah,
not going to lie. I was trying to stay focused because it was, I'm not a processes person. I think you have, I'm sure if you look back on your shelf there's a bunch of books behind Jaci if you can't see. And a majority of them, there's going to be a Covey book, there's going to be a Fish's book, there's going to be this book. I guarantee there's 8 million different process books in there, because you think, when Jaci has a problem, she solves it by going to read about it and then applying what she's learned to her problem. I don't do that as much. I just kind of deal with it.
You have a different process, and that's okay.
Yeah, my process does not have processes. I have
your process needs a process.
I have them. I think they're just more internal and theoretical. I have theoretical processes.
Okay.
But anyway, I did enjoy Chris. So I like how he broke things down, and he's somebody that I would like to learn more from, because I think he understands what that leadership role is, and like just meeting him personally, he's a very thoughtful guy, and you can tell he cares about other people, and he cares about the processes that he employs. And I think it's hard to get wrapped up in that in business sometimes, but it's important not to forget that part too.
Well, I think he's a great guy, and I think he's doing great work, and I think y'all are really going to enjoy your time with him. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Jaci and Michael.
Thanks for being here. I thought we might start with, obviously, I've done your whole fancy schmancy bio and listed all your accomplishments in the introduction.
Oh, so many.
So many, actually, quite impressive. I thought we might start with kind of your approach to what you do, because, having met you through 21 Hats, I actually got to talk to Lauren earlier today.
Oh, cool.
And seeing how you approach some things, like when we were at that conference together in Fort Worth with the fish tank that you do, fishbowl, it kind of give people a big picture vision of who you are and what you do.
Wow. That's a good one. Well, sometimes I get introduced as a recovering engineer. I don't know if that was in that bio necessarily.
It is.
It is in the bio. I think that's because early on, I realized that it didn't matter how good of an individual contributor I was if I was working in a team with a leader where we weren't enabling people's best. And that's the short version. So what I have over the last 20 plus years worked on through my company and even before was, how can I show up at my best, and how I can support other people, not rescue them, not drag them into being the best, but how can we collectively do that? And some of that's systemic or systematic, like, what is our goal? Where are we going? And what's my part in it? And if I don't connect the dots, it's just, that's a lofty vision, and good luck, I'll just do whatever I'll do. Or it also could be that I have some real strengths and I have some kryptonite. My job's making me work in kryptonite all the time. Or there's people who are like, yep, Chris is a good guy. I'm sorry he's not going to be on the team very long, but he's struggling. But oh well, let's press on. So those kind of things have influenced me to figure out pragmatically, not from a theoretical research base, but more like, let's see what works. Let's try it out. And let's work with different teams to see what works and doesn't. And different things work or don't. Yet there's a commonality. There's a limited set of things that really help and support people versus don't bring out the best in each other. And so that's really at the core of it. I want a world where people can thrive individually and collectively at work. I've seen it. It's amazing when it happens. People want to go back when it happens. I love it. And yet we also have this place that tends to see people as cogs or diminishes them, or you're getting in the way of my success. What's wrong with you? So how do we, not in a fuzzy, butterflies and unicorns kind of way, but in a real way, have deep trust. You and I can disagree and we can commit to something, move forward, and we get better results because of that. And we hold each other positively accountable. And so those are the things that I think are key. And we've just built all our productized offerings, I'd call them. Like they're tools that we use, but only when they're needed. It's not like you need this tool, don't you? It's what are you doing? Where are you going? And then here's something that might help. Let's try it out.
I love that. What's the process that you go through to help assess and determine which of your offerings are going to help them solve whichever challenges they find themselves in?
Yeah, it absolutely has to fit into their picture. So rather than a lot of consultants, I think, say, where do you suck? Where are you having problems? And let's see, we might be able to help you get to the surface of the water if you pay us a lot of money. I like to work on the things like, what would be amazing? I mean, there's a reason you started this, or something you thought was possible. It may have been a bit dampened by reality, but what would be amazing around here? And what's your plan? What's your trajectory to get there? So we'd be exploring that together. And then also it's like, look, what have you tried? What's worked? Because some things have worked and that's a great plan. And what have you found is not working, or are you struggling with it? There's a gap, or you get to the end of one thing and you're like, there's a ravine. I can't cross it. That's when we would say, we have some, here's a bridge builder, here's this thing, and it wouldn't be doing it for them, it'd be doing it with them. So maybe we could explore with your team what it would take for them to build this bridge over. And by the way, if we get clear on that, it's halfway built.
Right.
It's halfway built because everybody's like, okay, I know what to do. It's going to happen. And then they say, great, that's awesome. Thanks so much. And, they go off and do their thing. And then 6 months later, they say, we're having more honest conversations now. Our vision was just sort of, people didn't say no. That's not like saying yes. So how can we make a vision that everybody says yes to?
Right.
Would you help us with that? Well, let's see. What have you done? How's it work? So it's an enabling kind of bolting on side and helping, and then unbolting and being happy that they're on their way.
I bet every company could benefit from this in some way or another, or at least the ones who want to grow and get better. But do you think there's a sweet spot in terms of size or ratio of working in the building versus remotely? How do you kind of figure out where that perfect blend is?
Yeah, I haven't seen the in versus remotely. I think the more there's two of those, the more challenges there are, because people can make up stories about the people they're not seeing, like what are they doing in the office, or what are they doing out there in the field? So that can be more challenging. For me, there's a nice sweet spot for us, I think, between, say, probably 20 people to about 250. Because at that level, you've got enough of the challenges going around that they can get in clicks, or, you can have bad patterns, but you also can look around the room and say, what, we can change this. We're all one thing.
Right.
So that really helps. It also was really critical, the mindset and philosophy around the leader. Do they care about people or not? If they don't care about people, they're merely looking as them as cogs. I think what we have is probably not going to help them. But if they care about people, they feel the weight of the organization. They feel like, I'm a steward. Even if I own this organization, I'm a steward to give it to somebody else. And so I need to take the best care of it and grow it the best I can so that somebody else takes it on, versus I'm the owner. I can burn out the tires. You can't make me change them. I can run on the rims.
How often do you have owners who take that approach?
Almost never.
Okay.
And I think it's because, it's marketing and getting out into the world where people go, these folks will come alongside and help you get where you want to go. This is not something, go fix them, go do that.
Right.
Years ago, I had somebody who said, and I figured this out with some help from my coach. It was like, hey, come fix the team. And I just don't hear that anymore. But if they said that, I've learned to say, okay, well, let's, what would the team look like when it's in that fixed state? How would they function? How would it work? And we talk about that. And then I asked the question, what would your role be in keeping them in that fixed state? And I felt like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Then, okay, we can work, but like, nope, nothing to do with me whatsoever. It's all about them. I look them in the eye and say, you know what? We have someone that can help you.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And I love that because I would imagine that because I've met, from a marketing perspective, we meet the owners who are like, go fix that.
Right.
That's, and I think that if they were willing to hire you and bring you in, they're going to want it to work. And so they are those motivated, engaged owners.
I think though, yeah, but I think it's double-edged though, Jackie. I mean,
Okay.
because we do that for our company, and I've been kind of the not as willing to jump into some of these things as you have, as far as bringing in. We have a coach that works with our team. We have professional development. We offer them one-on-one sessions so they can go talk to things outside of us. We don't really have we're not big enough to really have an HR department. So we offer those type of things so they can help with their career path and how to communicate internally, all these things, right? So I think we're pretty progressive in some of those things. But at the same time, I can also see where somebody would say, myself included, like, that's not really my business to get into the headspace of people, now we're dealing with, we're getting personal, and it just feels kind of like, I don't know. I mean, how to approach that. I'm not saying that's the way it is or the way it should be, but I can see how people would approach that. I don't know if you've had the same experience, Chris, but where people are like, look, I don't want to get into that because now I'm getting into like really personal things that it's crossing the line between what's comfortable with business or not, right?
Yeah. And yes, and here's the yes, and it absolutely. I mean, we do executive coaching and leadership management coaching, down into or out to the edge of the organization, where that first time technical person moving to leader is like trying to figure out what the heck to do. And it's very hard because their worth is in doing, but yet the value will be in how they enable others to do. That's a really hard shift for people to make, right? So, but that's a personal thing. Here's the difference. It's sort of like, how would you as their leader be a supportive environment for the shifts that they're hoping and you're hoping that would happen? Mm-hmm. If you're like, no, that's your problem. That's all you've said you need some support. Frankly, I'm not going to give it. So good luck. Versus you saying, you know what, when you come and you're going to have these changes and shifts in behavior you want to experiment with, I want to be supportive of that. So I want you to let me know what that is and see how that fits into what we can do. Maybe there's an opportunity to try it out versus them just trying to figure out how to squeeze it into their regular job. So if it's collaborative, we're fine. If it's you know what, you're a problem and this is going to go fix you. And then you'll be the way I need you to be. And then we'll never have the problem again. It usually doesn't work. It's like taking somebody, smoking cessation classes and bring them back and everybody's smoking. And you're wondering why there's a problem, right? It's not going to work.
But you have to admit though, like how do you not get into some of these things without getting into a personal aspect? Like you can start to dig in, you pull somebody aside, you start talking
business
to them,
and personal are completely separate, Michael. They never overlap. I'm kidding.
I was going to say, right?
Yeah, I'm kidding, right?
Impossible. Because, like you're talking to somebody and they have a problem with the way they deal with their peers or the way they deal with authority or anything like that. And you start to get deeper and you realize, oh, wait, this is bigger than I can really even fix. This looks like something you've got to probably go deal with somewhere and then bring back. Like where do you know the line is?
Yeah. Well, the line. I think the thing is for that. I would say the leader. What I would encourage the leader to do is like, what's this thing that's bigger than both of us? Versus you need to get better. It's like we need to have this thing happening in the organization. I want to support you in that. Here's your part in that to go work on this and figure it out. And when you come back, and you can do what you can do, we figure out how does that fit in? Does that mean your role shifts? Maybe we've got you on the wrong chair or something. But again, that's business dependent. If there's not another chair to go to, that's what you can do. Right. So it is this bigger context and then helping support them for that bigger context, not saying I'll make you lattes every day because that's what you want every morning.
Right.
No, right. It's going to be like, you need to take care of yourself. We need to take care of clients. And I want to make sure the system supports you and you're showing up with your part and I'll show up with my part.
Yeah. It reminds me of something my dad used to say, and I've said it to my kids. Unfortunately, it's weeded into my psyche, but it's a you problem, not a me problem. And I think that's the wrong thing to say in this situation. But I remember hearing it growing up. It was like, I would come to him with a problem. He's like, that's a you problem. You got to figure that out. I can't figure that out for you, And again, it's like, where does that start and begin? And how do you provide the, sometimes I would think it's just like because you care a little bit, like you're not there's I'm listening. If that's all that there is, right?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is what's the we problem?
Mm-hmm.
What's the we problem we're having? The clients are getting pissed off or work's not getting done or whatever like that. That's the we problem. We need to make sure this place functions like this or whatever. You agree with that, right? Yes.
That affects
Here's
everyone,
my part of
yeah.
it. Here's your part of it. And so I will support you. And it's really key. Michael, you're saying a really good thing, because we have had times recently, even I get a thing where I get a note from HR or I get a note from the boss that says, hey, you need to go coach so-and-so on such and such. This just happened. And I replied to it with a fairly straightforward notice. And I hear that and I understand that. For this to work really well for me, here's how it goes. You, the leader, meets with the person and says, here's the standard. Here is what we heard. You need to go work with your coach to figure out what you need to change to hit the standard. Like, I can't go and say to them, hey,
Right.
your boss told me blah, 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 right? Like, I'm here to help them support their learning. You'd set the context for that. So if you don't set a context, I can't help. They need to know what to do. And then we're all moving toward what does the business need?
Mhm.
So it's a yes and, totally. But you're right in there. I mean, like, it's not your job to make people happy. It's not your job to make everybody thrive personally. It's a collaboration.
But it is our job to make this as productive and pleasant and caring a work environment as possible, because that's how we get the best out of the team.
If that works for you, yes. There's some people that drive really, really hard, and it's all about how can we succeed together because we win fast together. That might be the culture there. And if you're in on that, and you're with that, it works. And you still need, even if you're driving fast, you're going to need gas and tires and,
Right.
maintenance. And, we need to pull you out and have some R&R.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, Michael, so when we think about the work that we're doing with professional development, since you brought it up earlier, to me, that's about creating the best opportunity for our employees and our team to give their best. That's why we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think so. And I think I like the idea of, I think it's a perk. I think it's a huge benefit to have somebody on, like not literally on staff, but they're available to have your own, conduit or your own, just to, again, be heard, to have conversations with, to have advice and support. It's like, we don't all reach out for that when we need it, I think, at times. And I think to have that offered as a free service is valuable,
Yeah. Well, I think so too. And if it worked perfectly in your world, Michael, that this service is providing just what it needs to provide, how is the business different from where it would be without it?
You're asking me how it would be different?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, poof, it's going exactly, everybody's taking advantage of it. It's just working like a top. How is the business different because of that, people taking advantage of that?
I would hope. I don't know, because I don't hear much. I've heard positive things, but basically I would think that it would be, people would be more engaged and bought in. They'd have more ownership in what they're doing and as a company itself, I would think.
Cool. And Jaci, for you, what would you say when it's working perfectly? How is the organization different? How's the business different from where it is?
I think that when it works perfectly, we are a well-oiled machine of collaboration and creativity, and people can feel good about being here because they've had enough off time from not being here that when they come here, they're energized, they're enthusiastic, they're glad to be here, and our clients feel that energy from us.
Nice. So here's what I'm going to share is that those two things, if you introduce the program with those two things, that takes away with I'm not enough, I'm a problem, you're just trying to placate me, all the stories they could make up for why you're doing this to them.
Right.
The reason we're doing this is because we want this well-oiled machine, and this is what it's about, and we want people to feel they can contribute. That's why we have this. That's a very different context than there's this program you can use if you have a problem, and
Right.
I'm overstating it, but people make up these stories and they've been told they're not good enough. And so they will, unless told otherwise, they think this is just a continuation of what happened before. So you have the opportunity to set the site high for the right reasons. And then people will be like, I feel shitty. I don't like this. But you know what? I want to be part of this thing. So I'm willing to go through difficulty, challenge, struggle, self-development, because that's what we're all trying to do here. And if I don't want that and I'm not, they probably shouldn't be there.
I love that, Chris. We just last week had a professional development session around critical conversations. which is a fascinating program to me. And you keep saying the story they're telling themselves. I'm like, we just spent 2 hours talking about that. What is fact and what is story?
Right.
Which I think sometimes it makes people uncomfortable because they feel like it's therapy. And I guess in a way it kind of is, but it's within a professional context.
It's therapeutic. I mean, if that's going to help you. And you know, what's fascinating, I'll tell you, it's a tiny short story about something when we were sitting down with my team of, at the time, 3 other people, and we're trying to figure out what are the standards by which we're going to treat each other. Let's make sure it's a place that we can be courageous and brave and grace-filled, you know, but what are those things? And one of the persons said, she said, you know, we need to promise that we're not going to throw things at each other. And I first, I thought she was joking. So I laughed a little and I could see she was serious. And then I got pissed. I got pissed because I was like, how dare she assume that I would ever throw something at her? You know, like, what have I done? Right. But luckily I had this little, there's a little teeny spot. And I said, can you share what makes you say that? You know, what's making you, where's that coming from?
Right.
And she pulled up her capri pants and there was like a 3-inch scar in the side of her shin. And she said, this is what happened with the last CEO that I worked for. He threw a stapler at me and cut my leg open. And I was like, what? You know, I just couldn't believe that. And I'm like, what happened after that? Well, we had there's a medical person on staff, so they stitched it up and that's it. So I need us not to throw things at each other. And I'm like, I'm all in, you know, right? So it's amazing to me how often me as a leader, and I see it with others, that the thing that's happening has nothing to do with you. It's what's happened in the past, and why would they think it's different?
Right.
And so it's asking the questions and trying to understand, not to placate, to really figure out what are we doing together, and again, where are we going? What's important around here?
I was 22, one of my first jobs, and had a boss throw a stapler at me. So I
What's
totally
with these bosses
get it.
and staplers?
Well, it's on the desk. It's handy. It's
I thought you were
handy.
with the water bottle, and I was going to shut you down.
Well, while we're on the subject,
There was no scars, no stitches.
No
and-
scars.
Michael
just a
did
dent.
throw a water bottle at me in a meeting. It was awful.
It was an
Really
empty
wasn't a
water
stapler.
bottle, and it was a toss. It wasn't a throw. There's
It was
big
a throw.
difference.
It was overhand.
Should we talk more about this?
We should not, actually.
We have many times. It comes
All
up
right. Well,
more often than it should.
yeah, you know, I would say that here's the other thing that I really appreciate about working with leaders is it's hard. It's an unfair ROI in leadership, because everybody's looking at everything you do and assigning meaning to it, and like, oh, they hate each other, so therefore we're hosed, or you got to kind of deal with that. You're human, I think, both of you,
For the most part.
so just do your best job being human. And I think the thing that's really powerful is when leaders are vulnerable, say, look, that was a mistake. I want to recover. Here's what I want to do about that, or what would recovery mean for you? Those kind of questions allow people to go, oh, you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
Like our society says, you can make mistakes, you can recover, and it's about the recovery that matters and what we're striving for, not am I perfect or not. Now, believe it or not, no psychology courses, none of that, right? It's just watching people, working with folks and saying what works and what doesn't. And I think you get to the core of, like, people want to matter, people want to make a difference. And how do we create an organization? If we can create an organization that harnesses that, everybody wins. Everybody.
Everybody.
When I
The
think
leaders win, the employees win, the clients win, everybody wins.
Everybody
Sorry, Michael.
wins. It's hard
Sorry.
too, Michael. Yeah.
No, but it's like for a long time, we like the word corporate culture is not something that's new. That's been around for a long time.
Sure.
But it's transitioned, I think, a lot, especially in the past 5 years, probably from, let's all row together poster in the break room to actually giving a damn and working with your team to make sure that there is a corporate culture of something, right?
Totally.
And probably what you're talking about is even deeper than that. But I think in general, though, what we talk about in terms of branding is that if you don't have everybody that's happy and healthy inside the company, if you have bitter people and angry people, and even if they're not in front of client facing, eventually it's going to show. The product is going to fall, the service is going to fall short. Somebody
People
along
can
the
tell.
chain is going to break, and then somebody outside is going to notice it. And that's when it starts to affect the brand. And so you say, well, that doesn't matter. Well, it matters. It matters big time as far as having your people actually buy in and believe.
I even think if you flip it around the other side, when they're all aligned, when we're caring for each other, not in a lovey-dovey kind of way, like we matter, I believe in you, we're doing things together, that like transmits out like crazy. People can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
People can feel that through a video, and they may not see it in like writing, and they might not hear it in sound, but when somebody's there, they're like, this is authentic, it's real, and people are attracted to that because it's sadly it doesn't happen as often as I would hope it might.
No, we do a lot of assessments when we go in to start with a new company, for example, and we part of that process is we interview C-suite all the way down to the person answers the phones. We talk to everybody.
Yeah, cool.
And you can tell right away. And I love when we go back to them and say, things are going well, like the heartbeat is strong, and it makes our job so much easier. We don't have to deal with that. The worst situations are when we have to go back and say, they're not saying what you think they're saying. Like it's not what you think it is. And usually it's that way. It's like the top down. They say, oh yeah, we're all this and we're all that. And then we have to go back to them and say, look, here's what's going on. And we have to fix that. Before we do anything else, we have to fix that, because if we don't fix that, nothing else matters. It's all window dressing,
Yeah. And that's so key. I think that probably, 9 times out of 10, my guess would be, based on experience, is that, and I think this is individually, we think we're hiding our bad habits. We think we're holding back the concern we have or the worry, or when we're thinking less of someone, it comes through. I mean, we had to live together before we could speak, and we had to, speak before we wrote. And people believe that the internal, in this workshop that we were doing with Caitlin Walker, she talked about sort of, and it's not exactly right, but 3 levels of brains. Right. There's the level on the deep inside. This is the reptilian lizard brain. That's like safety, fight or flight. Like, am I physically unsafe? Something's going to happen. I gotta do something about it. Outside of that's the mammalian brain that says, are we connected? Do we belong? And sometimes those are going to be, if I don't belong, you put me in the ice floe and I'm going to die. Right. So those kind of things. And then the outside part is where we really get to choose. And that's where freedom is. So if we have safety, belonging, and freedom, we can enable the best in each other. Yet there's all this programming we have that says, well, you don't belong if you don't do this. You got to fit in, don't pull back on that freedom, just fit in and do what you need to do. Or, to be safe, I'm not going to show you how I'm different. And I think when we can rise above that, not in like a clinical way, we're just like, the way we work together is a way that you can say what you really feel, and we'll honor that and say, yes, and here's what we need to do for the company. And, how do we get more of the good stuff from you and help you step away from things that don't serve you anymore?
As you're talking about that, I'm reminded of something I read just this morning about the difference between fitting in and belonging, and how important it is to really find, in this case, it was peers, where you belong, and you don't have to change yourself to fit in, because you can show up as yourself and belong. And I think I forget how important that is in your work environment, not just in your personal life. And so, yeah.
Yeah, the opposite, I think the quote I've heard recently is the opposite of belonging is not, getting shut out. It's fitting in. Yeah. It's suppressing all the differences you have so that you can not be, sent away in the ice floe. Right. And we just do that because we want to survive.
Right. Well, and it brings us all the way back to, this herd mentality of humans, which you talked about. And so we feel like, we need that safety of being in the group. But in business, a company has to be able to stand out to be noticed. We have to be different. And so that is a fight for owners all the time of, I'm going to follow best practices. I'm going to do what my industry does. I'm going to do the things that way have always been done because that's the right way to do it. Or I got into this business to be different, not to be just like my competition. If I'm just like them, I won't be chosen. I have to stand out.
Oh, you're speaking my language. For me personally, I've had a pretty, it's like, but all these other people are doing that. We're not doing that. So we're missing out. And I want to honor the need for more success and how we're doing. We want to help more people. We want to have them have bigger impact. We know it's a great thing. And oh, by the way, it pays our salaries and we all get to live good lives. So great. And yet at the same time that there's a tension between let's do what everybody else is doing. If we don't, we're going to lose. And this sort of it was described as a fortress to me. You're holding this fortress. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what's in the fortress. It's the way we get to show up. It's the way we're different from other consultants who tell you you're stupid and you don't follow their 5-part plan, you're doomed. Before they ask a single question, they really we're trying to help people feel safe and ability to grow and try out being themselves, which that's not normally in the big mainstream. So here's the trick. We're trying to figure out those people that are going by in the mainstream. Could there be a little tributary that goes out and says, if you're here and you think that there could be something different, take this exit and we'll welcome you inside the fortress, little gate and let them in. But we still haven't figured that out yet. We're working on it together. Maybe we need some help.
I mean, I know some people.
You know some people?
I do. Actually, man, I don't know if I'm allowed to sneak this out, but 21
Ooh.
Hats is going to be providing an educational workshop series
No.
on marketing and differentiation to dominate and how to build a strategic brand plan for 2025.
Okay, so I guess I need to. This was not scripted, and I like it. So we need to figure this out. Let me know. We'll be there.
Well, by the time this podcast drops, I bet the link will be dropped, so everybody can go to 21hats.com and get access to it. It's going to be limited class size, though. If that fills up, we'll have to do more because we're keeping it a small group because it'll be very interactive. But it's for exactly this, because differentiation is the only way to succeed in business. If you blend in, you have the safety of the humanness of the herd, but you cannot succeed in business because you will not stand out, and therefore you cannot be chosen.
There's like little bells and chimes going off in my head. It's just this beautiful sound, heavenly sound. Keep talking.
Yes, but it's true. And so it's what I love about the human condition, because, I think about the professional development that we bring people in to do for us and that you do for others. That is so necessary for us to work as a team. So we have to speak the same language. We have to have those crucial conversations. We have to move past the stories we tell ourselves and get into what are real facts so we can do the real work. And at the same time, outside of our companies, we have to separate ourselves from the pack and differentiate and use our own language to get attention to ourselves.
Well, you can hear what I'm trying to do is this yes and thing. It's like we need this mainstream and we need to protect. How do we do both? How do we do both?
Well, I think within our company, though, Jaci, to bring it back to people and teams and we have done well. I think Jaci and I, she may disagree, but I think we're not good managers at all. We never have been. I think we're good at our jobs. We're good at what we do. But we want people to approach things like we approach things, like grownups, basically. Like, hey, I expect you to do your job, kind of things, right? And you don't need an attaboy every 5 minutes to get through life. I mean, we just don't need that. We don't need that hey, good job, whatever. So a lot of times we don't do that. We don't do the things that we should be doing probably more of, and we've gotten better at that, I think. But I think what we have done well, though, over time, and not right away, is identify people's strengths and where they're at, and talking about being different, standing out. We have people that what is that? 5 languages.
Keep talking.
Yes.
Chris and I are going to talk about this in a minute.
But that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like, different. We have 4 kids, all 4 remotely different. I mean, like incredibly
I have
different.
4 kids and they're all different too. What's with that? Anyway,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're rewarded differently. They're disciplined differently, all those things. And right. And so, and your team is the same way. They're all going to, get more out of certain rewards than others, but
Absolutely.
At the same time, what I was getting to, not to get off, because I know you're going to probably go on a tangent with this, but is that, like, we have people here that aren't peacocks. They don't want to be the attention. They want to do their job.
Oh, yeah.
They want to work. They want to get it done.
They quit if you put them up on the stage and said,
exactly,
look at them,
exactly.
look what they
but we
did.
found perfect places for them. And I think where they're happy and they can shine, and there's other people that need more attention. And it's finding those opportunities for them to be in those right areas, I think, is really important.
Well, I would put you in the upper category of leaders and managers who don't think it's just technique and things like that. You're actually trying to figure out, how do you enable people to be their best? It's not easy, and it's very difficult, because frequently people, if they knew it, they would just tell you and you would just do it, right? But they don't know either. So we're trying to figure this all out together. I had a team member who's just like kind of leaned in and said, okay, so let me get this right. I've been working here for a couple of years. This is all just a really big self-improvement project, right? This is like the life working on me. And I said, well, what makes you say that? We talked a little. And I said, and it's all about communication. There's really, I mean, you could do all sorts of stuff, but it really boils down to, do we have communication or not? I said, well, what do you think? And I'm like, God dang, this stuff is hard. When it works great, though, we could kick ass. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I said, yeah, for me, it is. I mean, maybe that's what I'm putting into the universe. And so that's what attracts people who are doing that. But I think it's an amazing opportunity to do great things together and matter in ways we can't just by ourselves.
Agree. So the book that I held up for those of you who are listening to the podcast is The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And Michael, to your point, the argument follows, it's Gary Chapman, and it follows the same principles of the 5 love languages, But now
Which
this is
Gary
in the
Chapman
workplace.
wrote, right?
Also,
Yeah.
he wrote that as well. Yes. And so the idea is, everybody feels appreciated or loved in different ways. And so if you know their language, then you can give it to them. And when you have a big team, you have to make sure that you're providing different opportunities for that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want them to be responded. Or
Right.
you can do like, it's kind of what Michael said, or I've seen other people do, is I'm just going to hire everybody like me. And then what I do is what they'll need. And then we're all happy.
Right.
That's one way to do it. It's kind of limiting your possibilities.
it-
Well,
'cause
that's
does
not
not
what
work.
we've done.
No,
Very
well, we
much not
tried.
what
We
we've
thought
done.
we have at times, but no, not everybody works well by having like no management. Like we're not micromanagers, right? So we don't punch the clock. We're not going to like.
yeah,
if
so
you
you're
need
not
to
on
leave,
that
go
side, right? You're not on the micromanager
No.
side, but you're not on the lovey-dovey
No.
ones, right? You're like,
No,
there's
if-
someplace in between to manage that.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's that we're, if you have to go somewhere, go somewhere. Like we're not gonna, you don't need to, hey, can I ask off to go to the whatever? Like, no, just go, and get your work done.
Right.
But a lot of people need more structure. And so it's like, how do you balance both and how do you find the right place for, because you got to, it goes back to not just the employees you have, but how do you make sure you have the right ones that are fitting with what you want? Because if there's a bad fit, it's a bad fit. And there's
Yep.
no fixing that, I think.
Right. It's
Unless
hard.
you think
It's hard.
otherwise.
There's
Yeah.
places people can thrive and places they don't. And
Yeah.
helping them decide what they can do to make that decision is important. It doesn't mean take it or leave it. I mean, I think it does require some work because usually when I stretch, it helps me and the company.
Right. Very much so.
Well, and like we had an interesting side note. We took some of those personality tests that you'll give us, Jackie.
Enneagram?
Yes,
Enneagrams.
Enneagrams. So we took those as a company, and this person is no longer here, but that person and I had the same whatever it was. And we're the
Enneagram
only
number?
ones. We're the only ones in the company that had them. We're the only ones. And like it was like, yeah, and it was like, oh my God, it made so much sense all of a sudden when we realized that that's why we're clashing, because we are both like this certain type of personality, and we both have to be right, or we both have to whatever. And yeah,
there was only one, right? Highlander, like there was only one.
really, and but it's really affected how we look at, because I just we always take these things, but it's the first time the light went off for me. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that is why we're not jiving. And if we do go down that path and we hire somebody else in that same category, we got to really talk about it,
We would not.
Yeah,
would
I
not.
think assessments are good when they give people a mirror into things that they won't otherwise know. And one of the challenges is that most people don't know their superpowers.
Right.
Because it's like breathing to them. And it's like, it's no big deal. Like, in fact, they look at others and like, I've literally heard leaders who are like, why do they choose not to do that? Because everybody must have this because it's normal for me. And in my little bubble, why would I assume that I'm special? Unless I got some kind of feedback. But if I don't know where I'm special, I will be unable to see where you're special. You're either like me or you're a problem. Versus saying, I have these powers. You have those powers. What are your specialnesses? Because I have some weaknesses too.
You just described Jaci Russo.
No, I appreciate other people's powers.
Okay. I'm sorry. I let personal roll into this because
Bring it.
What?
no. It's like,
They don't connect. I'm telling you.
yeah. Why can't you just get up on time? Or why can't you just be on time? Or why can't you just do this?
Oh,
Well,
now we're talking about something else, probably.
Yeah,
I
that's not
didn't
the
do it
same
in-
thing, Michael.
No, I didn't do it intentionally. Like I didn't do it intentionally. Sometimes it's just not in my wheelhouse.
Chris, did you
Alright.
plan on
sometimes
being a
maybe.
marriage counselor today? Because I don't think you did.
It's you know what? All relationships are challenging, and I think it's about how people listen, understand each other, and allow people to be different. And also, how can we partner to get to this bigger thing? Usually, it's like for me and my wife, who works in the business, it's a yin yang thing. It's the
Right.
black and the white thing, right? But what's really key is that there's a white dot in the black thing that's wrapping around the white, and a black dot in the white thing that's wrapping around the black. So there's some things I have to do that I suck at, that my wife is amazing at, so that I can honor that rather than outsourcing all that to her. Like that's just her thing, right? That's too much, and vice versa. So we call that dot work. Doing our dot work is like, what are we doing that like, it's hard for me to make a list and go get groceries, and it's hard for me to start things. But if I could do that, and I don't want accolades, I don't want like fanfare, but I just, every once in a while, I'm going to do this thing that I frankly hate. I suck. I don't like to do it. I'm going to do that just to kind of honor that. And she does things that I'm really the best person in the relationship to do it. By her doing it, we honor each other.
Right.
Pretty powerful.
Well, it's
stuff.
each
So
of you giving
there's my marriage
100%
counseling
instead of
there.
each of you giving only 50%. The 50-50 thing doesn't work. It's got to be
No.
100-100.
Yeah.
What is fascinating to me is that I was just about to say how well I think I do that, because I regularly say you cannot expect a fish to climb a tree. You have to acknowledge what the fish can do well and let them swim, and ask, the monkey to climb the tree because that's what they do well. And so I think that's
Right.
really the better way to lead.
I think the challenge of having people like live in their kryptonite is really hard. You need to
Yeah.
do this. It's really tough. We've had employees who I think the role asked them to live in their kryptonite, and it's not good. That's a lose-lose. It's lose for
Right.
everybody.
Absolutely.
If it's kryptonite for you, but I can pick it up and it's fun, let's trade. Let's do that. And that's
Right.
where I think teams can make a better result, is because they can have you holding my kryptonite, and it's fun for you to do.
It makes total sense. Getting up early is my kryptonite, Jackie. Accept it.
I know. Michael,
It's
when's the last
kryptonite.
time I mentioned anything to you about getting up early? I mean, it's been years. Why are you still carrying this around? Let
I'm
it go,
just
man.
glad both of you got up to be with me. Let's say that.
Exactly. And so am I. All right. I want to make sure that we honor Chris's contribution to today and that people know how to find you. Obviously, I think they should go to Amazon and buy your book, Ripple, a field manual for leadership that works. They should go to your website and you will tell them the URL, which is
TrebuchetGroup.com. It looks like Trebuchet, kind of,
Yeah. Well, we come from Cajun country, so we're good with the French.
TrebuchetGroup.com.
Yes. And reach out if they want to have some of this awesome goodness in their company with their team and really develop the leaders that their people can be. You're the ones that can help them do it.
Yeah, thanks. I think we'd love to have those first conversations. Hey, if everything went great, what it would be like, and how might we support you in that? That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, that is awesome. Chris,
How do you,
thank you.
hey, before you let Chris
Okay.
go, I am curious
Sure.
real quick, like
Right.
when you do work with companies all over the
Yeah.
country, probably,
Yep.
has it been more challenging to do those things remotely, or has it opened the door for more opportunities to do that remotely?
I think both. So we usually do in-person, a couple days with some pre-work and post-work. If we're all the way across the country, it doesn't make sense to fly us out constantly. And we would do follow-ups. Once the relationship is established and we all kind of trust each other, getting back on a Zoom call is a lot easier, I think.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, we had to figure out how to do it fully remote because nobody was going anywhere. And the skills we learned from that, actually using some tools to do processes faster, like collect people's information rather than me writing on a flip chart. Everybody's typing in all their ideas onto a
Yeah.
virtual whiteboard. Actually made the process go faster. And that was important because people needed more connection. Normally, it's like 60% process in real time, 40% connection. And it was the flip or even more. People needed 60 to 70% connection because they weren't getting it any other way.
Mhm.
And then having processes that would get the same results really fast. Cool part is we've actually taken some of those and brought them back into the real world. So we can have longer connection, quick processes and stuff. So it's
Nice.
a both and.
Nice.
Luckily, we
All
turned
right.
that corner. Yeah, it helped us.
Better for
Nice.
it.
All right. So, Chris, thank you
Yes.
for your time. I
Oh, my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
I am sure that everyone has gotten a lot out of this. And for everyone who would like to improve their teamwork and better train their leaders and make sure that they're creating an environment where their people can thrive, they should reach out to you.
Would love to have the conversation. And good luck to you both.
Thank you, and to you.